Here's a genuinely strange sentence to actually sit with for a second. MasterChef Australia hasn't even aired Meghan's episode yet, and the whole appearance is already being talked about, in some circles, as something close to a disaster before a single frame has reached the public.
Oh no, she's done it again. Meghan Markle has just made the judge of Australian MasterChef, a household name, beloved figure in Australia, Po Ling Yao, cry during filming. And all of this shocking information, including these pictures showing that vile look, the type of look that she used to shoot at Catherine and Prince Harry all the time.
Not because of anything that happened with the food, because of one single word a host reportedly wasn't supposed to say. Let's actually walk carefully through how a fairly simple guest judging appearance turned into this particular mess, because the whole sequence genuinely is stranger than it sounds when you first hear the headline version. Network 10 released the first promotional footage of Meghan's appearance recently, filmed back during her April visit to Australia, set to air on the 26th of July. The format is straightforward enough. She walks in as a surprise guest judge, presents the remaining contestants with a set of seasonal ingredients, and asks them to build a dish around a personal memory. On paper, this should have been close to a perfect fit for her. Her Netflix series, With Love, Meghan, is built entirely around food, hosting, and carefully arranged domestic warmth, and it's already picked up a Daytime Emmy nomination.
So it'll be airing next week, and Meghan has asked all of the contestants to create a dish that is fit for a duchess. It's understood that she'll be wanting them to create something that's sort of nostalgic and has a story behind it, and also using local produce, so some strawberries, macadamia, honey, things that she loves. It'll be interesting to see if any of the contestants try and recreate one of her fruit spreads, for example.
A MasterChef appearance should have been an easy, natural extension of that brand. Except before most viewers had even seen the full episode, the rollout ran straight into a genuinely bizarre dispute over royal terminology. According to reports that started circulating right after filming wrapped, Meghan's team had specifically instructed producers not to use the word royalty in her introduction. Not her formal title, not Duchess of Sussex specifically, the general word royalty itself. And according to a more recent report, host Po Ling Yao was reportedly genuinely upset once she realized that one enthusiastic, seemingly harmless sentence had pulled her into a royal protocol dispute she never saw coming. Think about how strange that situation actually is when you sit with it for a second. Po was hosting a cooking competition. She wasn't negotiating anything with Buckingham Palace. She was introducing a surprise celebrity guest on a reality cooking show, and one word reportedly created a genuine backstage problem.
Do reveal that things were so bad that the producers had to step in several times, with behind-the-scenes sources revealing that while things looked picture-perfect on screen, tensions were simmering beneath the surface. A bit like her spread, I guess.
Sources have claimed she wanted to personally reach out to Meghan and apologize directly, but was reportedly advised by the production team to let them handle it instead. A separate report suggested a few playful exchanges between the two of them didn't land quite the way either intended and were subsequently cut during editing. None of that proves there was some enormous screaming match, and it doesn't prove anyone was in tears. A source close to Meghan has actually denied she was upset at all, insisting she had a genuinely wonderful time filming. But here's the thing that denial doesn't actually resolve. Why was there reportedly a specific rule about the word royalty in the first place?
Meghan's just not really good at just flowing through life. She has to make everything insanely difficult. This is what we have seen endlessly. Is everything about her is a struggle, and she does it to herself. So Meghan's on-set request has reportedly left MasterChef judge Po Ling Yao upset.
There's a version of this that's worth acknowledging fairly before we go further, because it's genuinely possible the entire framing around a strict no royalty instruction is being overstated by outlets looking for a cleaner headline than the reality actually supports. Production teams navigate all kinds of small preferences and requests from talent constantly, most of which never become public knowledge at all. It's entirely plausible that what actually happened was a considerably more mundane conversation about preferred phrasing, blown up into something that sounds far more dramatic once it's filtered through several rounds of reporting.
The contestants frequently gravitated towards Judge Po Ling Yao for reassurance and feedback rather than focusing solely on Meghan as the headline guest. That's according to a spy on the show.
Stay with me though, because even accounting for that more mundane possibility, this is exactly where the story gets genuinely interesting rather than just gossipy. Meghan and Harry stepped back from senior royal duties years ago now, and they've repeatedly and consistently presented themselves publicly as independent of the institution. Fair enough. That's their stated position, and it's a coherent one on its own. But then why does nearly every major public appearance still lean so heavily on the exact titles that came directly from that same institution she stepped away from? The MasterChef promo doesn't introduce her as entrepreneur Meghan Markle. It doesn't say actress Meghan Markle or television host Meghan Markle. It says Duchess of Sussex, which means the title is apparently valuable enough to use for attention, for branding, for prestige. But the general word describing that exact same status is somehow off limits.
Meghan Markle reportedly, quote, frustrated. The word, quote, royal was used during MasterChef appearance. Well, why else is she there? Why else is she there?
That's not a clear, coherent identity. That's closer to a walking PR contradiction, and Poe appears to have stepped straight into it simply by trying to make an entrance sound exciting for her own audience. If you're finding this breakdown useful, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel keep digging past the surface-level version of stories like this one. This is exactly why the controversy has generated more actual conversation than the cooking itself has. Viewers can understand someone holding a title. They can understand someone choosing to give one up entirely. What people genuinely struggle with is wanting the benefits and recognition that come with royal status, while simultaneously getting frustrated when someone simply describes the appearance using that same royal language out loud. You can't build an entire promotional entrance around the words Duchess of Sussex and then act shocked when a host uses the word royalty to describe you. And the promotional machine isn't treating this like a casual cameo either. Network 10 has reportedly called it one of the most talked about television appearances in recent memory, with coverage leaning hard on her Netflix series, her lifestyle credentials, and the Emmy recognition around With Love, Meghan. Every single detail is designed to communicate that this isn't just a famous woman wandering into a kitchen for fun.
The episode was taped earlier this year, and Yao accidentally introduced Markle as, quote, royalty during her guest judge appearance. Polling Yao said the show, quote, had MasterChef royalty in the kitchen before, but no one like this. But according to Sky News, Markle and her team insisted producers not claim she's royalty. The show went on to introduce her formally as the Duchess of Sussex.
This is supposed to be the arrival of a serious food and entertainment figure in her own right. That kind of enormous buildup creates its own enormous risk. When a network tells its audience an appearance is historic and unmissable, the actual footage has to deliver something memorable for genuinely good reasons. So what's the biggest talking point to come out of this so far? Not a brilliant dish, not a shocking judging decision, not a single piece of advice that actually changed how any contestant approached their cooking. It's an argument over one specific word. That's a genuine promotional problem, honestly, because the controversy is simple enough that literally anyone can understand it instantly, with zero background knowledge required. You don't need to have watched a single episode of With Love, Meghan to see the contradiction sitting right there. You don't need to follow royal family drama closely to ask the obvious question: why would the Duchess of Sussex specifically object to being called royalty? The story requires no context at all. It just lands immediately, and once that specific question is sitting in a viewer's head, every other polished moment in the promo starts looking a little different. The grand entrance suddenly feels more calculated. The cheers from the kitchen feel a bit louder than they probably should. The whole thing starts to feel heavier than a simple cooking show cameo has any business feeling.
But New Ideas reporting continued. Perhaps the most uncomfortable moment came after the cameras stopped rolling when promotional material touting Meghan's upcoming appearance saw Poe introducing her as royalty. And you'll remember the reporting was that her team were frustrated about that, and they were outside the studio when the introduction happened, and Poe was upset because she didn't realize that by using the word royalty, she'd gone against Meghan's wishes. And you can't blame her.
Let's actually look at the clips themselves for a second, because the substance underneath the royalty controversy is arguably just as revealing. In one clip, Meghan tells the contestants that food and cooking function as a love language, a way of connecting with people, of showing nurturing and care toward family and friends. It sounds warm. It sounds sentimental. It sounds exactly like the message threaded through With Love, Meghan from start to finish. The issue is that audiences have now heard this specific kind of language from her repeatedly, across multiple projects. to the point where it started to read as a formula rather than a spontaneous reflection. Everything becomes meaningful. Everything becomes about nurturing. Even a table of vegetables somehow arrives wrapped in a speech about love and connection. There's nothing inherently wrong with genuinely enjoying food or with using cooking as a way to bring people together. That's a completely reasonable, relatable sentiment on its own.
A different insider shared a lighter observation about Poe's personality on set, saying Poe is full of energy, she's always joking and lifting the mood. She tried to bring that same spark with Meghan, cracking a few playful lines, but not all of it landed as intended. It's difficult, isn't it, if you're a kind woman and you're dealing with a woman-hating bitch?
But MasterChef is a high-pressure, competitive environment. These are contestants fighting for their spot deep into a season, working against the clock, not standing in a softly lit kitchen arranging flowers for a leisurely brunch. Meghan reportedly admits in the footage that she doesn't enjoy cooking under pressure herself, and says she prefers cooking in a relaxed setting. Her actual advice to the competing contestants amounts to having fun, keeping a sense of humor, and cooking from the heart. That sounds pleasant enough on paper, but what does it actually give a contestant standing there with a ticking clock and a dish that needs to be judged in minutes? Cook from the heart isn't a technique. It's not a flavor pairing. It's not a rescue plan for a sauce that's about to split with 5 minutes left on the clock. This was genuinely an opportunity for Meghan to demonstrate that her carefully built lifestyle image had real technical substance underneath it. She could have spoken about balance, about acidity, about timing, about how to actually use the specific ingredients sitting in front of the contestants. Instead, viewers got another smooth, polished lifestyle slogan layered on top of the last one. Then there's the ingredient table itself. Meghan presents citrus, macadamia nuts, local Australian honey, Brussels sprouts, and various other seasonal items. When Brussels sprouts specifically come up, she proudly mentions that Archie and Lilibet eat them, and the judges react with what looks like genuine astonishment. The kind of reaction usually reserved for something a lot more remarkable than a kid eating a vegetable. It's a harmless enough family detail on its own. But given how heavily this entire appearance has been promoted and packaged, even that small, throwaway comment ends up functioning as part of the broader publicity machine.
Markle may have thought her appearance on Australian MasterChef would help, I guess, propel her image as a chef, and yet somehow the appearance has turned into master mess. Because according to reports, Meghan Markle made one of the co-hosts cry over the use of the word royalty, which is utterly bizarre as Meghan is obsessed with her own title.
My kids eat Brussels sprouts. Is that genuinely the standout relatable moment here? Then Meghan spots edible flowers on the table, one of the single most recognizable visual signatures from her own lifestyle show, and calls them flower sprinkles, visibly lighting up at the sight of them. Of course she does. If this entire appearance needed one single image to summarize the whole Meghan lifestyle brand in a single frame, a tray of edible flowers is honestly close to perfect for it. Beautiful on camera, carefully arranged, instantly recognizable to anyone who's seen even a few minutes of her show. Critics argue the appearance ends up leaning considerably heavier on presentation than on actual demonstrated cooking knowledge, and while that criticism might sound harsh in isolation, the promotional footage itself doesn't exactly make it hard to reach. We hear plenty about feelings, family, connection, relaxation, flowers, and cooking from the heart. We hear considerably less about the genuinely difficult technical work the contestants themselves are actually required to do under real competitive pressure, which is exactly why this specific appearance matters beyond just being one throwaway television episode. Meghan isn't simply showing up as a random celebrity guest judge here. She's actively trying to reinforce an entire business identity built specifically around food and lifestyle content, and MasterChef is one of the biggest cooking franchises anywhere in the world, which makes the platform genuinely significant for her brand, and makes this specific stumble considerably more costly than it would be somewhere smaller. Standing in that kitchen environment does give her a certain instant credibility by association. It places her directly alongside genuine culinary professionals and talented, hardworking contestants. It signals to viewers that her broader cooking persona deserves to be taken seriously as more than just a hobby dressed up for cameras. But that kind of credibility can't survive purely on titles and beautifully composed camera shots. The audience actually has to believe the underlying passion is real. The advice has to genuinely sound useful rather than decorative. The excitement has to feel natural rather than rehearsed. And if viewers can clearly see the performance working too hard to convince them, the whole illusion tends to collapse fairly quickly. A lot of critics already believe that's roughly what's happened here. Online reactions to the early teaser clips have described the appearance as awkward, cringy, overly scripted. Some viewers have specifically questioned why a lifestyle content host is being positioned as a serious culinary authority on one of the genre's biggest competitive shows. And the episode hasn't even aired yet. People are already actively debating whether the whole thing amounts to a genuine celebration, a calculated stunt, or something closer to a fairly desperate attempt to inject fresh momentum into a brand that's been under real pressure lately. That's a genuinely difficult position for any promotional appearance to be sitting in before it's even gone live. The entire goal here was to present Meghan as warm, relatable, and genuinely confident in a kitchen setting. Instead, the public conversation is currently centered on royal terminology disputes, alleged editing decisions, and open questions about whether the whole appearance feels authentic or manufactured. If Meghan was genuinely as relaxed and warm with the contestants as the footage suggests, how exactly did the introduction reportedly leave Poe visibly upset afterward? If the entire atmosphere on set was as wonderful as the official denial claims, why are there specific reports that certain exchanges between them didn't make the final cut? If nobody involved was actually frustrated by any of it, why did the royalty controversy surface almost immediately after filming, wrapped and then resurface again the moment the actual promo dropped publicly? Someone here is presenting a carefully cleaned up version of what actually happened, and it's worth being fair about which direction that cleanup could be running. It's entirely possible the initial reports simply overstated an ordinary, forgettable production misunderstanding that happens constantly in television, where a single, slightly awkward moment gets inflated into a full-blown celebrity feud by outlets looking for a headline. But it's equally possible that the final edit was carefully shaped specifically to protect the appearance, quietly removing anything that didn't fit the warm, sentimental image Meghan's team wanted the episode to project. That's genuinely the open question viewers will now be watching for once the full episode actually airs. They won't just be watching the food anymore. They'll be studying Poe's face for anything that reads as tension. They'll be watching Meghan's own reactions closely. They'll be looking for sudden cuts, strange transitions, any moment where the underlying energy on set seems to shift in a way that doesn't quite match the polished final product. The controversy has effectively turned an ordinary guest appearance into something closer to a forensic inspection, and that might honestly be the biggest backfire in this entire situation. Network 10 wanted viewers tuning in for a glamorous surprise moment. Instead, a meaningful chunk of the audience will be tuning in specifically hoping to spot evidence of tension underneath the surface. Even the specific language used in the actual cooking challenge is drawing its own scrutiny. Reports indicate contestants were asked to prepare a dish fit for a duchess. Once again, the title itself becomes the centerpiece of the entire moment, rather than staying quietly in the background. The episode clearly isn't running away from Meghan's royal connection at all. It's actively using that exact connection to build the entire event around, which raises the obvious question all over again. Why fight over the specific word royalty when the challenge itself is explicitly built around the word duchess? You genuinely cannot market someone as the duchess and simultaneously treat the word royalty like a dangerous violation to avoid. Either the title is actively part of the show's promotional identity, or it isn't. It can't functionally be both depending on which specific word gets used in which specific sentence. This exact confusion follows Meghan into nearly every new project she takes on, honestly. She wants to be seen as genuinely independent from the institution she left. But her royal identity remains, by a wide margin, the fastest and most reliable way to generate attention for anything she's involved in. She wants to come across as casual and relatable. But the actual entrance is staged with the kind of ceremony usually reserved for a visiting head of state. She wants viewers focused on the food itself, but the title consistently becomes the actual headline regardless of what she's cooking. The result isn't a clean, coherent reinvention of her public identity. It's two competing brand narratives quietly fighting each other on camera, in real time. One version says she's simply a California mother who loves cooking, local produce, family traditions, and edible flower garnishes. The other version says she's the Duchess of Sussex, an internationally recognized royal figure whose every entrance apparently requires careful language and specific handling instructions. The public can see both versions running simultaneously, and they genuinely don't fit together as smoothly as her team clearly wants them to. That's exactly why this particular MasterChef episode has quietly become a much bigger test for Meghan's brand than a standard guest appearance usually would be. If the ratings come in strong, her team will likely frame the controversy itself as having generated valuable interest and attention. If the appearance is warmly received by viewers and contestants alike, they'll point to that positive reception and dismiss the backlash as predictable, low-stakes online hostility. But if the finished episode feels flat, heavily managed, or overly controlled, the criticism is likely to land considerably harder, specifically because this was supposed to be safe, uncomplicated territory. No palace involved, no royal interview, no family accusations, no courtroom, just a cooking show. And yet even inside a television kitchen, the same familiar questions kept surfacing anyway. Control, titles, image management, conflicting accounts, and someone reportedly left upset in the aftermath of Meghan's arrival. How does that keep happening? Project after project, regardless of the setting. The timing genuinely couldn't be more awkward either, given everything else currently in motion. Meghan's own potential future involvement with Britain has been under renewed discussion recently, following Harry's latest UK trip and fresh speculation about the couple rebuilding some form of connection with the country. But British public opinion remains a genuinely massive obstacle, standing in the way of any of that. Favorability tracking has repeatedly shown Meghan sitting near the bottom of royal popularity rankings for years running, with one recent measurement showing only around 1 in 5 Britons viewing her favorably, while a clear majority held a negative view. Those specific numbers aren't a direct referendum on whether Meghan should be welcomed back in any formal sense, but they're a fairly blunt warning about the reception that would likely be waiting for her regardless. A polished, well-received MasterChef appearance might genuinely help soften her image somewhat in Australia and in America specifically. It does very little to erase years of accumulated hostility sitting specifically in Britain. And if reports of special demands and disputes over royal language keep following her from project to project, they risk reinforcing precisely the image her own team appears to be working so hard to move away from. It's worth being fair to Poe directly here too before we close out on the broader implications. She's a respected, experienced host with her own established reputation in Australian television, entirely separate from anything connected to this specific controversy. Getting pulled into a royal protocol dispute over a single enthusiastic sentence, through no real fault of her own, is a genuinely awkward position for anyone to find themselves in, regardless of which side of the actual disagreement turns out to be more accurate once the full story eventually surfaces. The actual problem here was never really a lack of exposure in the first place. Meghan consistently gets exposure in genuinely enormous quantities. She consistently gets major platforms, prestigious partnerships, and significant headlines with almost every project she attaches her name to. The real problem is increasingly what happens once the cameras actually start rolling and the polish has to hold up under genuine scrutiny. What do you genuinely think? Will the full episode, once it actually airs in complete form, prove all these critics wrong? Or does this whole pattern feel like it's simply repeating itself once again in a slightly different setting? And separately, do you genuinely think Meghan can ever fully separate her personal, independent brand from the royal title she publicly says she doesn't want people focusing on? Or is that tension simply baked permanently into everything she does going forward? Drop your honest take in the comments, subscribe to Palace Insider if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.